Ma'am, are you sure you're in the right seat? The flight attendant's voice was polite, but loaded with judgment. Passengers nearby paused their conversations, some even smirking. The black woman, holding a baby in one arm and her ticket in the other, replied calmly, "Yes, 3A first class." What happened next didn't just silence the cabin. It grounded the flight, embarrassed the crew, and sparked a chain reaction no one saw coming. "Ma'am, are you sure you're in the right seat?" The words were delivered with a plastic smile and a polished uniform, but the tone was sharp, like a blade wrapped in silk. Nia Carter, a 29-year-old single mother from Atlanta, paused for a second. Her right arm clutched her 10-month-old son, Malachi, who had just drifted off to sleep on her shoulder. Her left hand calmly held her boarding pass, creased from where she'd double-checked it at least 5 times already. Seat 3A. First class. Her seat. She smiled politely and extended the pass. "Yes, ma'am. 3A. The flight attendant didn't immediately look at the ticket. Instead, her eyes scanned Nia from head to toe. Her hair was tied up in a neat bun. Her travel outfit, comfortable leggings, sneakers, and a hoodie, was practical but not luxurious. Her baby bag, slightly worn, hung off her shoulder. The attendant's brow arched with subtle disbelief. Finally, she glanced at the ticket. A pause. "Oh, I see. Right this way," she muttered. Not a warm welcome, not even a nod, just cold acknowledgement. Nia took her seat, carefully settling Malachi in her lap and adjusting a soft blanket over his body. She could feel the tension before her back even touched the seat. The man in 3B glanced sideways and then down at her. His frown wasn't subtle, as if her presence was a disruption to the peace and quiet of his overpriced flight. The whispers started before the seatbelt signs even lit up. She must have gotten upgraded. Must be some airline mistake. I bet she's one of those social media people. Free rides, free fame. Nia didn't respond. But the sting? That was real. She had paid for this seat with her own money. Full price. No miles. No coupons. No charity. For 5 years, she had worked 2 jobs, managing billing in a small dental clinic during the day and stocking shelves at a warehouse at night. She'd saved bit by bit while raising her son alone. No child support. No help. Just grit, late nights, and motherly determination. And now, the moment she had looked forward to for months, flying first class for the first time in her life, was being tainted by judgmental stares and quiet mockery. A woman in her 50s sitting across the aisle wrinkled her nose dramatically when Malachi sneezed softly in his sleep. Nia glanced over. "He's not sick," she said gently. "It's just a little allergy from the cold air." The woman didn't respond, just turned her face away and sighed loudly, clearly for others to hear. Then came the crew member again, the same attendant who questioned her. "Excuse me, ma'am. Would you mind holding your baby a bit closer? We have complaints about noise." Nia looked down. Malachi was asleep, peacefully. "There hasn't been any noise," Nia said quietly but firmly. "He's sleeping." The attendant glanced around and quickly softened her voice. "I'm just passing on feedback. We want to keep the cabin comfortable for all our premium passengers." Premium, as if Nia didn't belong in that category. She looked around. No other parents. Mostly businessmen, a few couples, and some older white passengers, all looking at her like she'd walked into the wrong party. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the sheer injustice of it all. She wasn't going to cry. Not here. Not in front of these people. She'd survived worse. But what they didn't know was, Nia didn't just buy that ticket for convenience. She bought it because she expected respect. She didn't want to be in the back with a baby crying next to loud talkers and bumpy trays. She didn't want to beg people for understanding. She wanted space. She wanted peace. She wanted her son to know that he, too, deserved soft things in life. Airplane legroom, warm towels, sparkling water, all of it. But now, with every side glance and every fake cough, it was clear these people didn't care about her ticket. They had decided she didn't look the part. Then something happened. The man in 3B leaned over toward the flight attendant and muttered something. The attendant returned a few seconds later. "Ma'am, we received a concern about your baby's safety in this cabin." Some passengers feel it's not ideal to have an infant up here due to potential turbulence. Nia blinked. He's properly seated and belted with me, as per FAA rules. Yes, but we'd be happy to reseat you further back, perhaps closer to other families. No, Nia said louder this time. I bought this seat. I'm not moving. The attendant's lips tightened. The nearby passengers went quiet. Then Nia did something no one expected. She reached in her side pocket, took out her phone, and calmly said, "Now I need to make a quick call. To my attorney." The moment Nia said the word attorney, the air in the cabin shifted. The flight attendant froze, clearly unsure how to respond. For a moment, everything was silent except for the low hum of the engines. Even the businessman in 3B leaned back, watching out of the corner of his eye, pretending not to eavesdrop, but absolutely glued to the scene. Nia didn't yell. She didn't make a scene. She simply picked up her phone, dialed a number, and put it to her ear. "Hi, Lisa. It's me. I'm on a flight. I need you to stay on the line for a second." The name Lisa wasn't random. Lisa Sanders was not only her best friend. She was also a civil rights attorney who'd handled several discrimination cases involving airlines and corporate misconduct. She had warned Nia to expect microaggressions when flying alone as a young black mother. Nia hoped she wouldn't need her, but now, here they were. The flight attendant's face turned pale. "Ma'am, there's no need to escalate." But Nia cut her off. "You suggested I move seats after I paid full price. You said my child wasn't safe here without offering any valid reason or documentation. And now, I'm being singled out. This call is already being recorded." Passengers were now actively watching. Some tried to pretend they weren't. Others were clearly uncomfortable. One woman near row 2 leaned into her husband and whispered, "She's playing the victim." But a man behind Nia, an off-duty air marshal, as it would turn out, raised an eyebrow and said loud enough for others to hear, "Actually, she's well within her rights. I'd sit tight if I were you." The flight attendant stammered, "Let me check with the captain," and quickly walked toward the front of the cabin, disappearing behind the curtain. Lisa's voice came through Nia's phone calmly. "You're doing the right thing. If they try to remove you, ask for the reason in writing, and make sure someone nearby is recording. I'm notifying Delta's legal rep now." Nia thanked her, then looked around the cabin. The passengers who were bold enough to harass her before now avoided her eyes. The man in 3B pretended to scroll on his phone. The woman across the aisle fiddled with her air vents. No one had anything to say now. A few minutes later, the curtain opened again. But this time, it wasn't the attendant who returned. It was the captain. Tall, in his early 50s, he walked with a calm but serious presence. He knelt slightly to speak to Nia at eye level. "Good evening, ma'am. I understand there was a situation here." Nia nodded. "Yes, I was asked if I belonged in my seat. Then I was offered to be moved to the back due to other passengers' discomfort. I paid for my seat. My son is safe and quiet. I was made to feel like I didn't belong here, and I've contacted my attorney." The captain's face didn't change, but he turned slowly to glance at the rest of the cabin. Then he looked at the man in 3B. "Sir, did you raise a concern?" The man sputtered, I said it might be better." The captain held up a hand. "Thank you. Noted." He stood up and addressed the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, this flight will not be taking off until all passengers understand that discrimination of any kind, subtle or direct, will not be tolerated aboard this aircraft. Miss Carter and her son are welcome here. In fact, they have every right to be in this seat. More than some of you deserve, frankly." Gasps were audible. The flight attendant appeared again, looking like she'd aged 5 years in 5 minutes. "Captain, we're just trying to maintain comfort." He interrupted. "Your job is to follow safety protocol and customer service policy, not enforce your own biases. Step into the galley. We'll talk after takeoff." Boom. Just like that. People in coach craned their necks to figure out what was happening in first class. Rumors were already spreading. Something about racism, a passenger being forced to move, and a captain stepping in. Nia, still holding her baby, took a deep breath. Malachi blinked awake for a moment, looked around, then dozed off again on her shoulder. For the first time since she boarded, she felt seen. Not because she raised her voice, not because she fought, but because she stood her ground, and someone in power finally backed her up. The captain nodded to her. "We'll be pushing off shortly. Enjoy your flight." As he walked away, Nia could feel a different kind of silence settling in. This one wasn't fueled by judgment. It was shame. Shame from the ones who had left, who whispered, who tried to push her back to where they thought she belonged. And the irony? They were now stuck on the tarmac because of their own ignorance. The plane was 35 minutes late taking off. Not because of weather, not because of air traffic, but because one single mother had refused to back down, and a crew was forced to reckon with the quiet prejudice simmering just beneath the surface. The rest of the flight was uneventful, at least on the surface. The man in 3B stayed glued to his laptop, barely looking up. The woman across the aisle, the one who had audibly sighed when Malachi sneezed, now stared out the window with forced interest in the clouds. The flight attendants, now clearly walking on eggshells, brought Nia her meal with almost robotic politeness. "Chicken or pasta, ma'am?" The same woman who tried to move her asked, barely making eye contact. Nia chose the pasta, not because she was hungry, she wasn't, but because she wanted them to serve her like they served everyone else. Malachi, meanwhile, behaved like a little prince. He slept most of the flight, stirring only to drink a bottle and glance around at the soft lights of the cabin. The very child they claimed would disrupt everything didn't even cry once. But Nia's mind was racing. She kept thinking, how many other women like me have been made to feel this way? How many stayed silent? How many walked to the back of the plane because they thought making a scene wasn't worth it? The flight landed at JFK just past 9 p.m. As the plane taxied, people started gathering their things. First class moved slowly, but with tension in the air. Then came the voice over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is the captain. We will be deplaning shortly. However, we ask that the following passengers remain seated for a brief word with airport personnel." The cabin paused. Then he said it. "Seat 3A. Miss Nia Carter, please remain in your seat." Gasps again. Confusion. Murmurs. Nia's heart jumped. Was she in trouble? Were they going to try something sneaky now that they were on the ground? A part of her considered calling Lisa again, but before she could reach for her phone, the captain himself appeared at the front of the cabin. Behind him were 2 Delta Gate agents and someone wearing a dark blazer with an airport security badge. The crew opened the first class curtain wide. As passengers stood in the aisle watching, the captain looked right at Nia and said, "Miss Carter, on behalf of Delta Airlines, we want to personally apologize for the experience you endured. You were not just a model passenger. You were mistreated by staff who failed to uphold our values. As of this moment, an internal report has been filed, and the individuals involved will be placed under review." The man in 3B turned a shade paler. The female flight attendant looked like she wanted to disappear into the overhead bin. Nia was speechless. Malachi blinked awake, looking around as the entire first-class section looked on. Then, one of the gate agents stepped forward and said, "Also, Miss Carter, we've been authorized to extend a full refund for your ticket, a voucher for future travel, and complimentary accommodations tonight at the airport hotel, should you need them. We'd also like to speak with you privately in the terminal lounge, if you're willing." Nia didn't even know what to say, but she nodded, not for the freebies, but for the principle. She had walked onto that plane as just a single mom, a woman people assumed didn't belong. Now she was the center of accountability. As the passengers began exiting the plane, a few nodded toward her awkwardly. Some said sorry. One older gentleman in a suit even said, "Good for you. You did the right thing." But others, especially the ones who had whispered or rolled their eyes, rushed off without saying a word. Because deep down, they knew they had been part of the problem. Nia stepped off the plane, holding Malachi close to her chest. But now, her arms weren't tired. She walked tall, and in that moment, she wasn't just a mother or a tired traveler or a woman with something to prove. She was a force of truth, walking through an airport full of people who now understood that you can't judge someone based on skin, income, or motherhood. Because dignity doesn't come from how you look or what seat you buy. It comes from how you carry yourself when the world tries to shrink you. And Nia Carter had refused to shrink. By the next morning, Nia Carter's name wasn't just known to the few passengers in first class. It was all over the internet. Turns out, someone from coach, seat 9D to be exact, had recorded the moment the captain stood before Nia and made his powerful statement. The video wasn't shaky or blurry. It clearly captured Nia's calm face, her baby asleep in her arms, and the airline staff being put in their place. The caption read, "They tried to kick a single mom off a first-class seat. Then this happened. Clapping hands, clapping hands, clapping hands." And just like that, the world saw it. By lunchtime, the video had 2.7 million views on TikTok. By evening, it was trending on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube Shorts, and Facebook Reels. The hashtags exploded. Hashtag Flying While Black. Hashtag Nia Carter. Hashtag Single Mom Strong. Hashtag Delta Disgrace. Hashtag Respect All Passengers. Even people who didn't fly much were commenting. I've seen this happen before. But this time, she didn't just sit there. As a single mom, this hit hard. She handled it with so much class. That captain deserves a raise. And that mom? She's a hero. Nia didn't even know about the video until she opened her phone that morning. Her DMs were flooded. Reporters, activists, celebrities, regular moms who had been through the same thing. Her followers jumped from 3,000 to over 180,000 overnight. Her name was on the front page of BuzzFeed, HuffPost, and even CNN's Instagram feed. And the best part? Lisa, her attorney friend, used the opportunity to shine a legal spotlight on the broader issue. She posted a breakdown of airline discrimination cases and said, "This isn't just a viral moment. This is a wake-up call. If a black mother holding her baby still gets treated like she doesn't belong, then we all have work to do." The backlash hit Delta like a thunderclap. People began sharing their own stories. Passengers of color who were mistaken for staff. Families who were asked to move to the back. Young black men questioned about first-class tickets. The airline's PR team scrambled. They released a statement that evening. "We sincerely apologize to Ms. Carter and her child for the unacceptable experience she endured on our flight. We are conducting a full investigation and disciplinary action has been taken. We are committed to better training and creating an inclusive space for all." But that wasn't enough for the public. People didn't just want a statement. They wanted change. Within 48 hours, the airline announced new bias and sensitivity training for all cabin crew, a direct hotline for discrimination complaints, and an invitation for Nia to speak on behalf of underrepresented travelers at an internal company forum. Meanwhile, Nia stayed quiet. She didn't go live. She didn't do interviews. She didn't try to go viral on purpose. She was still just a mom, trying to raise her son, go to work, and stay humble through it all. But the world? It wasn't done with her. The View called. Then Ellen's producers. Brands reached out, offering baby products, travel gear, even modeling opportunities for her and Malachi. People sent money to her Cash App with messages like, "For standing up with grace," for all the moms who couldn't, for Malachi's future first-class seat. Nia cried when she saw the messages, not because of the money, but because people finally saw her, not as a stereotype, not as someone who didn't belong, but as a strong, loving, dignified mother who had every right to claim her space. And behind all the internet noise, one thing kept ringing in her ears, the captain's voice saying, "Miss Carter and her son are welcome here." Those words meant more than anyone knew. They weren't just about an airplane seat. They were about validation, protection, respect. It was everything she had fought for, not just in that moment, but for years. From the moment she found out she was pregnant, from the day she decided to raise Malachi on her own, from every time someone looked down on her, and she smiled anyway. Nia didn't need a viral moment to prove her worth. But when it came, she made sure it meant something. After the internet storm began to quiet down, Nia Carter stood at a crossroads. She could fade quietly into her old life. Let the fame pass, let the headlines disappear, and return to being just Malachi's mom. But something inside her wouldn't let go. Not after seeing thousands of messages from women who had been told they were too loud, too much, or out of place. Not after reading story after story of mothers humiliated in airports, students questioned about their seats, or fathers assumed to be criminals simply because of how they looked. What happened to Nia was bigger than one flight. It was a mirror to the world, a moral one. And now, she had a choice. So she made one. Nia started a blog and podcast called The Moral Mirror, a space where people could share their untold stories, challenge bias, and find healing. Her first episode? A breakdown of the infamous flight, told in her own voice, with no edits and no spin. They didn't just doubt me, she said. They doubted the kind of mother I could be because of how I looked, where I sat, and who I brought with me. But what they didn't see was my history, my strength, or my right to be there. That podcast episode got over 1.2 million listens in the first month. She didn't stop there. She began speaking at colleges, women's groups, airline equity panels, and diversity workshops across the country. She wasn't chasing fame. She was chasing impact. And everywhere she went, people shared their own version of her story. A Latina grandmother who was ignored by gate agents. A Black teen who was asked 3 times if his boarding pass was real. An Asian American mom told her baby was too loud before takeoff. Nia gave him space. She gave him words. She gave them power. Meanwhile, Delta, after intense public pressure and Nia's advocacy, began working with a team of cultural consultants to implement real changes. The same captain who had stood up for her, Captain Lewis Mercer, was promoted to Director of Crew Relations. And when he was asked to inspire the shift in company culture, he didn't hesitate. Nia Carter. She didn't just change a flight. She changed how we train people to see passengers as human beings, not problems. As for the flight attendant who tried to move her, she was suspended, then later moved into retraining and eventually apologized publicly through a company statement. Nia never demanded it. She didn't want revenge. She wanted accountability. Months passed, then a year. Nia's podcast was now in the top 10 for social justice and parenting on Spotify. Her TikTok clips, short, honest, and filled with compassion, routinely crossed 1 million views. People no longer saw her as the woman on the plane. They saw her as a leader. And most importantly, Malachi was thriving. He was now 2 years old, talking, running, laughing, climbing on every couch he could find. His favorite word was plane, and his favorite bedtime story was the one about how he and Mommy flew high and made history. One evening, while sitting on a panel at Howard University, a student asked her, "Miss Carter, if you could go back to that moment, when the flight attendant questioned you, would you do anything differently?" Nia thought for a long second. Then she smiled and said, "No, because standing up for yourself doesn't always mean shouting. Sometimes, it means being unshakable in your truth. I didn't move because I wasn't wrong. And the world noticed, not because I fought, but because I refused to be small." That answer brought the room to its feet. Nia Carter had become more than a headline. She had become a movement, a voice for those who had been silenced in the skies, in offices, in hospitals, in schools, and anywhere else someone dared to question their worth. So the next time someone says, "It's just a seat," you can remind them, "No, it's a symbol that everyone belongs, no matter what they look like, no matter what they're carrying, no matter what others assume. Because dignity doesn't require permission. It requires courage. And one mother, one baby, and one flight changed everything." Sparkles if this story moved you, helped you reflect, or made you feel seen. Loudspeaker, please subscribe and like Moral Mirror, where every voice matters and every story shines. Thank you for watching.